Welcome, traders. We are back. Episode 29.
Yeah, Merry Christmas, everybody, and Happy Holidays. And I really hope that you're going to have it. We're pre-recording this.
We're pre-recording it after Christmas. Like that was a couple days ago.
Hi, everybody. Happy Valentine's Day. Wait, what?
Well, if you're walking into Walmart right now, that's what you would think, for sure.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
well, if you're walking into Walmart, it's like, hey, everybody, Easter.
Yeah.
You just go from one Jesus Day to the next Jesus Day. And
There
then
you go.
Pop right back
There you
for
go.
Halloween, and then bam, it's Christmas again.
All right.
All right.
Now, traders, as always, everything's late. Nobody dies.
Yeah. This week was weird.
Was it?
Everything was early and nobody died.
But nobody could make it because we had
Because
snow
there's
going
a
on.
huge snowstorm. The one time I literally had everything up. Like, all I had to do was come in on Wednesday, put stuff on the new signs, and go, ba-boom! And I'm to feel like, and then Eric didn't come in. Like, damn it.
Yeah.
That was upsetting.
It was snowing pretty hard in like downtown Salt Lake.
Yeah, it was going.
Take my daughters there.
It was snowing really hard up here, too.
For those of you on Whatnot that are not familiar with us and what we're doing, Greg has owned a comic book shop for nigh on 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
Nigh on.
Nigh invulnerable. Spoon! Yeah, it'll be 19 years in May, so.
But you've been working comics for
A couple years before that, so yeah.
and collecting your whole life.
Yeah.
Like most of us.
Mhm.
So.
Yep.
We get a little bit different perspective. Me as a professional pressing service, Greg is a shop owner, has definitely a unique perspective, and we're collectors as well. So we've got that going for us.
Silver Age Flash. We don't have any right now. We are totally out of them. We had some in, but they're
That
gone.
is so impossible to come by.
Yeah.
Especially that Silver Flash. That's the one everybody's after.
Yeah. And that
That's
stuff
just
is so
crazy.
hard. We had like a little stack of them, and probably 10 or 15 of them, and those things were gone in a couple of days,
Right.
man. Like, there's some Silver Age DC stuff that you can always get it, like World's Finest,
Right.
things like that, like
Black
the Secret
Hawks.
Origins, Blackhawks, yeah, things like that. Adventure Comics, we got tons of that stuff. Man, if you get Detective, Batman, or
Right.
Flash in, they're gone.
Yeah.
Or Green Lantern are gone pretty quick too. But yeah, man, it's crazy. We sit on Supermans forever. We got tons of Silver Age Supermans out there.
Well, I think a lot of that has to do with the perception that Silver Age Flash is what kind of kicked off the Silver Age.
Yeah.
I understand date-wise that may have been the first book, but I don't think Silver Age really got rolling until Marvel
I think
kicked in.
FF1.
FF1.
Yeah.
To me, that's the book.
Yeah,
We've
I mean-
discussed it before. That to me is the book of the Silver Age.
Yeah, but I still think I feel like that Flash, that showcase Flash,
Right.
like really, I think that taught them almost like, hey, you know what, you can do new stuff now. You don't
Right.
have to either throw the Golden Age stuff away or keep going with it when nobody's interested. And and that's cool. I love that. So I would say that kickstarted it, but I would say the Fantastic Four #1 solidified it.
I think if you look at some of that early Marvel stuff, it definitely takes a cue from what DC was
Yeah.
doing at the time.
Oh yeah.
In tone and in character development and stuff like that. And unpopular opinion, I think that the Batman TV show I just realized that's like right in the middle of everything. We'll set that off the side.
Oh, there we go.
A little bit better.
We couldn't even see you if you're gonna do
not
this.
that you need to see me.
I'm the star.
I do feel
Absolutely not
that
true.
60s Batman, the camp TV show, really was more of a detriment to comics
I think
for
so.
decades.
Mhm.
I mean, it was fun. I love watching it as a Batman fan.
It
It's fun
was
to
a
watch.
detriment to DC.
Absolutely.
I mean, and I kind of feel like it was okay. This is what we're gonna do. It's gonna be silly. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be campy. It's gonna be goofy. And then that sort of informed for years, like up until probably the 90s. I feel like
Oh,
what
yeah,
people
definitely.
thought comics were. You know,
And-
because you're going to you tell anybody like in the 80s, 70s or 80s, yeah, I collect comics. You're like, oh, are you a kid, or are you a child,
Right.
or do you just not know how to read?
Right.
Because all they knew was bam, pow, boom, and it was kind of like, I don't like that. It took a long time, and oddly enough, I think a lot of that changed with Dark Knight, with Batman. So it started with Batman and maybe ended with Batman.
I could see that. I could definitely see that.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a lot of us that got into more adult themed and adult toned
Mhm.
books in the 70s.
Yeah.
You had the San Francisco stuff and
Yeah.
Ralph Snart and all that.
Last Gasp and
Yeah.
yeah.
And very adult themed books.
Mhm.
And it was still, from the general population, looked at as a kid's medium.
Right. Yeah.
Even to the point when I was in high school, I was really started reading heavy books early on. I read, James Bond and Jane Eyre and War and Peace, and I read that kind of stuff as a young teen.
Did they novelize the James Bond movies?
They
I didn't.
They did.
That's cool. That's really neat.
This was before Dynamite, so
Oh, okay.
they
Yeah.
didn't have
All right.
pictures or anything.
Sure. Okay.
But I still was an avid reader of the comics, and even the mainstream Marvel, the
Mhm.
Marvel stuff in the '80s was really more geared for an older crowd. Maybe not adult, but certainly
Not as much as it is now, quite, but that's when they started kind of making their change. I feel like the 80s
Right.
is when everything started making their change. The 70s, some of the 60s, but a lot of the 70s comics, I feel like we're doing that undertone of adult stuff, like weird.
Right.
That's when you got Arg and Howard the Duck and, Man Thing and Swamp Thing became huge, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
I was not going to say Man Thing became huge. No, but I mean, you got all those weird books that were definitely not like, the Bam Pow, the
Right.
Blue, whatever. And, and that was sort of subversive and, kind of saying like, hey, we can do other things if we want to, and we can do weird stuff that appeals to adults, but kids can still read and not get the jokes.
Right.
It
was really, especially in the '80s, there was this strange dichotomy going. You had indie books were really starting to bust out. Like they had been prevalent before, and you had. I don't really consider like the Archie stuff and the Woodman stuff. I don't consider even the Disney stuff. I don't consider that independent. Certainly the San Francisco stuff and the Ralph Snart, and then later Ninja Turtles and the Valiant era.
Mhm.
All of that stuff was really starting to break out in the mid '80s.
Yeah,
and it was really geared for adults.
it was.
You look at a property like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and you think, "Wow, that's definitely." It was not a kid's book.
Oh, there was tons of violence in it.
It was not. It was never intended as kids. It was.
Yeah.
It was written by two guys that wanted to write an adult toned book, but still have these fantastical creatures.
Which is why the turtles are so scantily dressed.
That might have something to do with it.
They hardly have anything on, and they're like headbands and
And a shell.
and headbands, a shell, and do they even have speedos? Yellow speedos? No,
They had a belt with their initial on it. Pretty racy
Yeah.
stuff.
And every one of them was D.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was like wow. That was like Donald Duck, man.
But I do think, and then in the '80s, that whole tone shifted. I think, like you said, with Dark
Mhm.
Knight, Watchmen,
Yeah,
certainly, and
V for Vendetta. I mean, it's as much as I don't love Frank Miller's stuff, he was so instrumental in like making stuff better and grown up in comics.
And just so we're clear, Greg's opinion of Frank Miller does not in any way reflect the views of this channel.
Just half of it. No, I mean, the first couple of Sin City storylines I really liked.
Right.
I thought they were really good. That Yellow Bastard was good. That kind of stuff. And I do think, Dark Knight was fantastic, the first one.
Right.
You know, his Daredevil stuff is like, you know, and maybe that's because he had other people, you know, drawing it, and it was more like a lot of his stuff was kind of noirish, but simplistic,
Right.
you know, but he had other people drawing that Daredevil stuff that was just so good. Was it David Mazzucchelli who was doing it, I believe? Yeah, you know, and it's like, man, he really should be credited. I feel, again, even though I don't love all of his stuff, but I really think that he should be credited as being one of those driving forces behind comics really growing up. So, you know,
I would definitely have to agree with that.
Yeah.
And it was not an easy job for him because at the same time he had to fight with people like Stan Lee who wanted to keep them firmly set teenagers.
Yeah. Yep. And I mean, you know, I always loved the Daredevil stuff, you know,
Right.
but it was like, you know, hey, that swinging dude, that crazy sort of Spider-Man guy.
Yeah.
You know, oh man, he's got love trouble and girl problems, and oh my gosh, what the heck are we gonna do? You know, and they Frank Miller brought that like huge, you know, scoop of, you know, Catholic guilt and devils and angels,
Right.
and, you know, all that kind of stuff, and made him more of a real character, you know, and then it just from there, for the most part, it's been such a solidly, consistently good series.
It has been probably the most consistent Marvel title for 40 years.
Yeah. Yep.
For sure.
And, you know, I mean, there's missteps, of course, but I mean, I would just say for a major Marvel title, that has been probably the most consistent.
I was actually to the point where when they did this latest reboot and went back to number one, I was like, that's too much. I'm going to fire Daredevil. But it's gotten better. Like, it's gotten better than what it was before. Right?
It's so good, and there's been so much good Daredevil stuff. I'm like, well, how are they going to top that?
Yeah.
You know, Charles Soule, when he was writing it, I'm like, okay, this is an attorney from New York writing about an attorney from New York. My God, this is going to be great, and it was.
Yeah.
And then Zdarsky took over. Now, and I'm like, oh man, this guy's just gonna. This is dumb, man. It's just gonna be a guy who's gonna be like, oh, I'm funny, I do jokes, and no, I was worried it would go back to the silly Daredevil.
Yeah.
You know, but it's not, and it's like, you know, and people got mad about Daredevil being a little more lighthearted in the She-Hulk series.
Right.
You know, but he's always had that. You know, he's always had that little bit of kind of silliness in the background, but when he gets down to business, he gets down to business. Not like he did in the She-Hulk series, but not like that. Anyway,
or the entire run of the Netflix series.
Yeah, I love that Netflix series.
Yeah,
God, I love that. Yeah, I was so happy that made Daredevil into a bigger character now.
So I liked all of the Netflix shows. I don't think they had a misstep there. I even liked Iron Fist.
Iron Fist, I thought the biggest problem was they had a guy playing Iron Fist that couldn't fight. You know, and
casting there was not great.
And if they did that when he had his mask on, why didn't they just get somebody else to fight? He's got a mask on.
Yeah.
You know, just get a real fighter. You know, somebody who knows martial arts or something to put the mask on, get in there and start punching people. I mean, you know, you wouldn't be able to tell.
Yeah.
He's got a mask
just
on.
Put a long blonde wig on Steven Seagal and go to town.
You would be able to tell.
Yeah.
He has no shirt on. That's not a good idea. Anyway,
So yeah, a little bit of a tangent to start
that's what we do.
So kind of what I wanted to talk about today is something that I've been thinking about is some of the history of comic books, right?
Mm-hmm.
And artists
Good.
that have been some of the most prominent artists around. And you pulled this out. This came in a collection that you were sorting. needs a good press, but
do you know anybody?
yeah. So I thought that.
What do you
was-
mean? Look at that. It looks like it's
cool.
was it a 9.8? Looks like that's perfect.
I think it's really interesting when these kind of things come in. This is a Terminator with a Burning Earth.
Burning Earth, yep.
Burning Earth #1.
Mhm.
First cover work of Alex Ross.
Isn't it the first interior work too, though?
They only have it listed as first cover.
Huh. Okay.
So, I mean, he may have done interiors of some off-brand.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that that's the case with like the McFarlane stuff. You have to go all the way back to
Coyote.
Coyote. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I should have known that. I have that book, but
Or Coyote.
but
Hi, Coyote.
we do or have in the past few months spent a lot of time kind of ragging on cover art and exclusives and
Mhm.
that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
And the evolution of how this art came from what we see in gold and silver age
Yeah.
with single covers to having now artists like this was a book that he did the cover and he did the interiors on.
Mhm.
And that's how it used to be. Your
Yeah.
interior artist would take a panel from the middle that he liked and then maybe
Make it into
tweak it a little bit
Yeah.
and make
Yeah.
a cover out of it.
Yeah.
With dialogue that had nothing to do with the book.
Yeah.
In most cases. We've gone from that to now we have artists that do absolutely nothing but covers. And
Mhm.
very rarely will you see any of them go into the interior of a book.
Yeah.
And if they do, it's only for a special occasion,
Right.
like the Momoko Demon Day stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Or, I mean, it's like, Todd McFarlane going, oh, okay, well, I'm going to drop part of number 300 or, whatever.
Right.
It is. I don't know, whatever. But, and there are some artists that are cover artists, I feel, that put some stuff into, like Action Comics 1050 and Detective 1000, that sort of deal. But, I mean, yeah, it's like you said, it's a special occasion. It's not something that happens anymore.
Right.
Which is kind of sad because, if you're good enough to be a cover artist, that's representing that book, man. That should be inside too. That's awesome.
Right. And I mean, I get that you cannot put cover quality art on every single panel inside a comic book. It would take you years to produce anything.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that a lot of artists get pigeonholed into, this is your lane. You need to stay in that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's an unfortunate byproduct of the, store exclusives and,
Yeah.
and that type of stuff.
Well, and a lot of people, we have kind of about that at times, but also, I mean, it's kind of like I don't know, the best way to put it, I guess, is if you're a band that does a cover song here and there, it's like, let's take a band I don't care for, Disturbed. Okay. Now, and they're like, okay, well, we did a cover song, right? Then that starts becoming popular. So they do another cover song, which becomes more popular. And then they ruin a Simon and Garfunkel song, which is even more popular, and they make tons of money off this. Okay, well, push that cover song that you did. Okay, whatever, go for it, man. I mean, I don't have to like it, but you're making your money. That's kind of how I feel with this stuff. It's like Alex Ross was making, a regular old page rate doing stuff, and his page rate went a little higher the more popular he got. Then he started like really doing that beautiful painting stuff, and then the page rates got higher and higher. And then people are like, okay, we'll give you a car if you do a cover, essentially is what he's making now. So, God, why wouldn't you?
Right.
Why wouldn't? I mean,
that's very true.
And you can go all day long with saying like, oh, Jim Lee didn't do anything. But you know what? Jim Lee does some cool covers and is high up in DC, so he's making plenty of money for drawing a picture every few months. I would.
As big
I totally would.
As big of a fan as I am of Jim Lee, I think he really shines on interiors.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Oh yeah.
there's very few artists that I can think of that in the history of comics were good enough that when they did interiors, they did them so well that like they just stand out. And Jim Lee's one of those people. He
I
was
think
able
Steve
to-
McNiven's another one.
Yeah,
And I think John Cassidy used to be one. I don't like his art as much as I used to. No, but when he was, I mean, I feel when he was doing Astonishing X-Men, that first run, that was just solid all the way through. I really liked that. Now his art looks kind of weird now. The faces look scrunchy and odd. But I don't know. But you know what? Speaking of Jim Lee, have you ever seen that X-Men with the first like incarnation of Ninja Psylocke before?
Ninja Psylocke.
Yeah, Ninja Lock. Kasai.
Yeah. What number is that?
That's a 256.
X-Men 256.
8 issues after he started his run on there.
Right. Which is first appearance of Psylocke. Available in the Buy It Now if you're watching that on
The Ninja Psylocke.
the Ninja Psylocke.
First appearance of Psylocke is New Mutant Annual 2.
See, I'm not familiar with X-Men anything at this point. And I like it that way.
Good for you.
There's too much X-Men going on.
Too many X-Men on the dance
much
floor.
X-Men.
Yes, there are. Yeah.
But I do think Jim Lee probably the best X-Men interior artist.
Jim Lee and Mark Silvestri.
Silvestri,
I loved his interiors on X-Men. I thought they were so good.
and that's another perfect example of somebody that was so good at interiors. They're not as detailed as covers, but far more than anybody else that was doing interiors.
Oh yeah. It was so good.
It's crazy how they could get that detailed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was great. I mean, he's still great. I mean, he doesn't do a whole lot anymore, but when he does, I'm always happy to see it because he is so awesome. And it's, I mean, you start looking at these, artists that started Image, and it is, you've got kind of one of the new Image situations, the Artists Elite.
Right.
And you're like, okay, well, Image Comics, it's all about the image. And it's like, well, that's a little cocky, And it's like, we're elite artists. I'm like, well, that's a little, And you got these brands like that. But the thing that always impressed me about Image is, I've met multiple times, some of them, every single one of these guys that started Image. And I have never had a bad experience with any of them. They're all extremely nice. McFarlane's really nice. Jim Lee's really nice. Silvestri, Valentino, all those guys are so nice. Eric Larson's really nice. And it's just, I mean, you would think that, they'd be like, well, yeah, get away, kid, don't bother me,
Right.
But they're not. They're really, really approachable and really friendly and really nice.
I do think that this is my personal hot take, but I do think that Eric Larson, pound for pound, the greatest interior artist that there has ever been in the comic industry.
Okay, let's move on.
He just is. I think he is the best.
Well, that's an agree to disagree.
Whether it's Spawn or Savage Dragon, like his pencils are
not my style. Not my style.
I just absolutely love his
and stuff. I mean, I have to give him total credit for what Venom became. Because for the most part, it was just kind of sharp teeth, a little bit of drool, and a black Spider-Man costume, and McFarlane was drawing it, which is cool. I mean, that's fine. It's got that kind of mysterious sort of, what is this thing going on? Is it Spider-Man? Is it, whatever? But I feel like Larson really, did that crazy extended jaw and the big tongue and the mega drool and just like turn him into this monster. And I love that. That is stuck. I think Venom should be a huge monster.
Right.
He shouldn't just be like, hey, look at me, I'm kind of like Spider-Man in the black costume. Because at first, he was kind of camouflaging himself as that. But then when he came out to be like this big, alien thing. I think it's better the way that he drew it. And I think he sort of fixed that whole perception of just, oh, it's a Spider-Man suit.
No, definitely.
Mm-hmm. Oh, speaking of Venom, see how I'm doing this? Isn't this great?
King of segues today.
My God, man, yeah.
Yeah, Venom, Lethal Protector.
That's a better segue than Joe Blue.
Now, I do think I was looking over this book. This is also in the Buy It Now. Probably the best copy of this book I've ever come across. It's insane.
Really beautiful copy.
Like, I never see them, and I've ran a couple 9.8s through CGC, and this one I can't.
Couldn't really find anything wrong
at all.
Yeah.
I'd be afraid to even press it, to be honest. I haven't seen the back, but that one looks spectacular.
Oh, there is no back. There's no.
That's all you got.
That's all I got. I printed that out on the computer. It's pretty neat. Yeah. No, that's a really, really solid copy.
Yeah. So, and I know I just said that about Eric Marks, but Larry Hama. Larry Hama was really solid.
Oh, he drew? Did he draw some of the G.I. Joe
He's
stuff?
done a little bit of the G.I. Joe stuff.
That's right. I just consider him a writer in my mind.
Yeah, as far as writers, and I really get into scripting and dialogue and stuff like that. And there's been some great writers. He's solid. I mean, I'd put him in the top 10.
You know whose art I miss? Bendis.
Yeah.
It was some of it was a little weirdly stylized, and he could draw in any style. Did you ever read Fortune and Glory?
No.
It was a really good book. It was an autobiographical book that he did, and it was about him like trying to sell his first screenplay and working in the Cleveland newspaper and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, and he's got a lot of pages of pinups and things like that in that book. And he can do like photorealistic stuff. He can do noirish stuff. He can do like silly stuff. He is so good. He is an amazing artist. And he hasn't drawn for years. Man, I think he did a couple of variants on Powers. Yeah, and I think that's the last time I saw him draw anything. God, he's good.
I think there are a lot of writers, people that are writing books, and you see a lot of artists that try to segue into the writing.
Mm-hmm.
And Todd McFarlane is a brilliant artist, but as a writer, he's
he's a nice guy.
He's a great guy, and he knows baseball. But, yeah. And he's a fantastic artist.
Yeah, I think he bought one. A baseball.
Yeah.
For a couple $100 or something.
I was really surprised Liefeld can write. Like his G.I. Joe stuff is really good.
Really?
Yeah.
See, I the only Liefeld stuff that I remember reading is Youngblood, and I was like, ooh.
Youngblood was okay for its time, for what it was. But I mean,
it was important for what it was. But he was very good. But
when he was writing Youngblood, he was writing, X-Men. He was. It is what it is. That was Shatterstar all day long.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So, but it's
a guy that looks like him with a backwards baseball cap named Shaft.
Yeah.
Okay, let's just move on from that. I suppose that's pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, his whole demeanor, his whole presence has changed a lot real noticeably in the last 2 or 3 years, but over the decades for sure. And he's mellowed out a lot. He's got things to say.
Yeah, man. But give him credit for that, to change and adapt to how things are.
Yeah.
And also, you've got to think about the fact that when Image started, he was what, 9?
19.
10, maybe?
Yeah, he's still just a kid.
Yeah, and he's like, oh, X-Force. And I'm like, oh, dude, geez, man. Every time I saw him on those Levi's commercials, I was just like, do you want fries with that? And he was a kid, man. So yeah, guess what? He's going to be cocky.
Yeah.
He's a friggin' teenager that made millions of dollars.
Oh,
He's gonna be like, I feel like in the 90s, late 80s and early 90s, comic book artists were like YouTubers.
Oh,
and
yeah.
TikTok,
they were rock stars.
Yeah.
For sure.
No, it's like, they were 18, 19, 20 years old. And they were like, let's buy 7 houses and fill them with cocaine. And let's lose our minds. Right. And it's like, it's almost no matter what they did, they just kept getting more money and more money and more money, and it's like, oh my God, man, no wonder some of them turned into jerks, I mean, but I feel like a lot of them have come back around too, because the first time I met Mark Waid, I was not impressed. And then the second time I met Mark Waid, totally different guy, 5-6 years later, totally different guy, much more humble, much more, I met him when he was on The Flash, and everybody was like, oh my God, he's a god. Look what he's done, I was not impressed with his attitude at all, but a couple years later, I met him again. I was like, oh my God, yeah, okay. Yeah, he's really, to his credit, he's really chilled out. I like this guy now, and it's like, and every time I met him since, he's been very nice.
Well, this hobby, this industry has a way of humbling a lot of people.
Yeah.
And if you look at, like, some of the greats, if you look at, like, Stan Lee, he started with nothing,
mm-hmm.
became real cocky and kind of a prick
mm-hmm.
in the late 60s,
mm-hmm.
and then ended up getting smacked down
mm-hmm.
when that bubble burst, and he became more humble and more of a people person, and he rode that until he started getting more popular. Like, he had his ups and downs.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
I mean, I feel like everybody has.
And there's a few of them. I mean, even our rock star artists of today are, acting like rock stars.
Yeah.
And it's not fared well for them.
No, it has not. I mean, I feel like today is maybe the worst time to do that because, I mean, back then you had, a couple of tiny comic conventions and then, a Hilton ballroom.
Right.
You know what I mean? If they could afford that, you had some sci-fi shows in a, abandoned warehouse or something, or a gym, you had a couple of fanzines.
Right.
Then Wizard came in, but they still weren't like, it wasn't like, somebody can, access Wizard and change the type and say, I don't like this person. I don't like this, which they can do now with social media.
Right.
They can do that online. They can do that with blogs, social media, and, you kids know what blogs are. Okay. Anyway.
Oh, yeah, because now we live in a day and age. If you run off with another creator's wife, the whole world knows about it the next day.
I never heard of that happening before. Wow, that's weird, man. That's crazy.
If you put a couple extra staples in the book, it's all over town.
It is all over, man. And everybody in the world knows what you've done.
Yeah.
And that will come back and hit you now. I mean, it's going to. For anybody that just joined us, this is not for this. These are not CGC. There's a CGC behind. There we go. All right. Yeah.
It's a list of. Yeah. So if you just join us, these are the books. Not that one. These are the books available in the Buy It Now. There are a couple pressing packages in there. We do have this beautiful, spectacular Spider-Man #1 and a Venom Lethal Protector #1.
Which used to be in perfect condition.
Yeah.
Yeah. There you go. Eric can get one of those pressing packages too. and may I say, I'm always impressed with your work. Okay.
And then, of course, X-Men 256.
First Ninja Psylocke.
So those are available in the Buy It Now. If you're watching us on Whatnot, pop on in there and check them out. There's also the Tyler Kirkham. Speaking of artists, brilliant artist that lives locally here, had those signed at FanX. He was really cool about it, too.
Good.
Like, hey, that's awesome. Did it for charity. So the Whatnot exclusives. It's really nice to see the local guys kind of breaking out.
Yeah.
And doing great things.
Yep.
I think we have, speaking of artists, we definitely have some incredible talent in
Oh,
Salt
there's
Lake, in the
just
Salt Lake
stupid
area.
amount of talent all over this place. You
Yeah.
know? And not only artists but writers, and I mean, God, there's just so much talent here.
Yeah.
You know, and then people come in and they're like, "Oh yeah, I heard Ryan Otley lives here." I'm like, "Yeah, Ryan Otley and Tyler Kirkham and Chad
Right.
Harden and Phil Seavey and Doug Wagner, and I mean, it's just a list. You know what I mean? There's so many people that are so good that live here.
Right. And if you're not familiar with Doug's work, go grab Plush because it's a ride.
Yeah, grab number 1 from me because we're sold out of number 2 now.
Really?
And number 2 is better.
Wow.
Like this is his best work, I think.
I
This
think
is so good.
I haven't read number 2 yet.
Man, oh my God, it's great. And you know what, Daniel Hilliard, his art I noticed in this is, and this is meant as a compliment, it really is getting very Ryan Otley-ish.
Really?
Uh-huh. You know, and I could see, just little glimpses of Invincible in this with, the expressions and the violence and, just the everything. And I don't mean he's copying Ryan, not by any stretch of the imagination. Right. I would be surprised if he wasn't a little influenced by Ryan. But yeah, it's so good. It is so good. His art is fantastic in it.
Awesome. All right. So what'd you bring to show off?
Well, since we're talking about this stuff, so I always really like, I like to get like personal stuff with a story, and so, last time we talked about the Sean Von Gorman stuff, and the goofy picture he made of me and Tony Danza.
Right.
And also spinning off that same night at the Crab Shack or whatever the hell it was, spinning out of that, like the next day, Joe Mulvey,
Okay.
and Joe Eisma, were there with us. And the next day at the convention, they're like, "Oh man, thanks for dinner. We owe you something." I'm like, "Nah, you don't owe me anything." And they said, "Yeah." And I said, "Okay, well, here, draw a picture for me." So they did like this jam piece that is so freaking cool. Look at that, man.
Oh, that is awesome.
Yeah. So Joe Eisma did the Spidey, and Joe Mulvey did the Venom. So they did that cover for me, which is an original cover, and see that with the glare there, but it is so unbelievably cool. And
That is super cool.
Loved that. And he was, Eisman was like, "Well, Mulvey's kind of the monster guy. He's the horror guy. So let him do Venom. And, I'll do Spider-Man." And I love how he's just like looking into Venom's mouth. Like, come on, man. Are we not over this? So yeah, that is fantastically cool. The next thing that I brought, hi Brian. Good, how you doing? Fantastic. We're live. Cool, huh?
I didn't want to interrupt you.
No, it's totally awesome. And the next one, and this one really means a lot to me, George Perez.
Oh, wow.
This Spider-Man cover that he did for me. And that one is like so cool, man. We were at a convention. They had retailer hours. It's the only time I ever met him, and he was incredibly nice, very gracious, really cool guy. And I typically, would take these when I went to, retailer conventions or retailer shows, and and then we pop into convention early. I'm like, "Hey, then you want to do a real quick sketch for me?" I'm like, yeah, sure. And I walked by, and I was like, "Oh my God, George Perez is just sitting there. There's one person talking to him, and I'm like, man, this is insane." It's like, I know it's retailer hours, it's like this first hour of the convention, and they opened it like an hour early for retailers. I believe it was Baltimore, but anyway, it was so cool, and I'm like, "Oh my God, man, I wonder if he would do one for me." And he's like, "Yeah, well, these are my prices for a head sketch," and all that. It was like cheap, because he was just a cool guy.
Right.
You know. Yeah. And I gave him that, and he's like, "Oh, okay." I said, "You just do, just a head sketch on there." And he's like, "Yeah, sure." And I came back, and he was like, or not came back, but as he was drawing, he's like, "I don't feel right about charging you that to do a head sketch on this book. I just want to do take up a little more room. Is that okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's fine. If you're asking my permission, sure, why not?" So yeah, he did that. It was like $25. I'm like, "Are you kidding me, man?" And we talked for a little bit, got some pictures together, and he was just such a nice guy, man. Only time I ever met him. That's why when he died, I was just like, oh man.
Yeah,
I had some strong feelings about that whole situation, as you know. And
that was a tough one.
Yeah, man, and that's like, yeah, man, that's why that's why I was just like, oh, good. And Neil Adams was the other one that really got me. But that's because, I did know Neil. I got to know him pretty well. And, we spent a lot of time at cons and stuff hanging out. And, he did a signing here once. Really, really nice guy. Once you get past that slightly grumpy, let me tell you about the center of the earth where people live. It's like, okay, all right.
And I do have to say, if you're watching this, speaking of Neil Adams, don't mean to interrupt you, but go to, if you're not subscribed to Comics with Bueller, go to Comics with Bueller on YouTube. He's got an interview with Neil Adams that is the interview itself. He filmed it at Washington State Comic Con a few years back, and the interview's great. It's an hour long. Him and Neil just talking about things. But he has a separate interview that I've seen it. He's shown it to me, but it didn't make the YouTube cut, where he let Neil riff. He's like, so now that that's done, what do you think about the president? And Neil went off for like 45 minutes about politics. It was the most entertaining.
Oh my god, man!
45 minutes of an interview I've ever seen in my life. Next time Travis is through, I'll have to see if he can dig it up for you.
That would be awesome.
Love it.
I would love that.
It is brilliant.
I would love to see that. But I mean, and he was like kind of that, somewhat crusty, like so he came across a lot of the time as, I'm a legend, do you know who I am? You know what I mean? But when you get to know him a little bit better, he was just a really sweet guy. And if you saw him with his granddaughter, he was a damn marshmallow. He was, I mean, he was like such a proud grandpa, proud dad, all that kind of stuff. And such a good guy. He was just a really good guy, and I do miss him.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that we've lost quite a few of the legends in the last few years. I'm on a personal quest to I've got to meet Jim Lee in person and have him sign something for me. I missed out on George Perez. I have a very nice George Perez piece that was gifted to me by Matt.
Nice.
But I never got the chance to meet him.
Yeah.
Well, we're Neil.
Yeah, like I said, just that one time was fantastic. And yeah, Jim's a great guy. He's really nice.
Yeah, I would definitely like to meet him. Rob Liefeld, Larry Hom.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's I only met Jim Lee a couple of times, but again, every time he was very gracious, very nice guy. He before I got my Wolverine tattoo, a little expanded there. I said, "Hey man, this is the first tattoo I ever got, man. It's your cover of it's a 268."
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh wow, that's cool. How come you didn't get the whole arm or the whole body of Wolverine?" I said, "Because it's the first tattoo I ever got." And it was terrified, man. That's why.
And we all don't have Jim Lee money. So.
Right? Yeah. Right.
I mean, there's that.
Man. So this is the last original cover I brought. This will totally blow your mind. Man. This looks like an actual cover. Look at that thing.
Oh, that's wicked.
Yeah. So Ryan Otley drew this awesome MODOK for me.
Wow.
Yeah, and I just really wanted to just do a quick sketch on it, and it was like, oh man, I didn't get it. It was at a con because I didn't get it done. I'll bring it by the store, when I get home, and blah blah blah. And then he was like, oh man, I forgot. I'm not done with it yet. I forgot it. And I'm like, dude, it's just a sketch, man. Don't even afraid. And he brought this in. I was like, what?
Oh, that's super cool.
It's like, oh my god, dude, what?
Wow.
And that is like, God, I love that thing, man. That is like one of the coolest things. That is just like, yeah, that should be a cover, you know, and that should be like a 1 in 100.
I can see that. I can see that as a variant.
Yeah,
for sure.
Like that's amazing. And that's a cover. That's not a sketch.
Yeah, and it's funny because earlier we were discussing a book. It was actually this Terminator we were discussing because this right now listing at fair market value is $6, but book value is $24.
That's why I like to refer to it as unfair market value, 'cause there's no way that's a $6 book, man.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be.
That's a key book in a, you know, pretty legendary artist, man. I mean, I don't want to feed his ego anymore because he's good at that, but you know, hey, whatever, man. The dude's incredibly good.
Well, definitely putting aside my personal view on his work, we all know that I don't feel he's a comic book artist. He's a brilliant artist, but he's not a comic book artist. He definitely has a place in the pantheon of all that is comic artists.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I think he's. You know, his digitally colored stuff is a little gaudy for me. Not crazy about it. And when he, you know, painted everything like I don't know if you can beat the artwork on those oversized DC books.
Yeah,
like War on Crime and that Shazam book, and I mean, it's just incredible, man. You know,
yeah.
And I mean, you know, sometimes it looks like they're just kind of wearing soggy pajamas, you know, but it's very realistic too.
Yeah,
So,
I think
you
that's
know.
beautiful stuff. His DC stuff is, in my opinion, his best work. The Superman. His
Oh
Superman
yeah,
stuff
yeah.
is
And
beautiful.
I do love his Marvels stuff though.
Yeah.
That was super good, man. But
The thing that the really funny thing is I don't consider him a comic book artist because of his style. Yet I'm a big fan of Davey Mack. It makes no sense.
no, it does not. Anyway,
It doesn't. I love Davey Mack stuff.
I saw him paint a naked woman in a bar once.
Was it Jessica?
I don't know. I don't know. It's in Seattle, and I'd had a few, and then I got lost, even though my hotel was a block and a half from the bar. That's another story for another
Very cool
day.
stuff. Very cool stuff. All right, so we showed off some really cool books. Again, if you're on Whatnot following us, pop on over to that Buy It Now real quick.
Yep.
Get yourself a pressing package. This book here is available. We have a couple Invincible #1s, Whatnot exclusives. Selling them, as I said, it's #1 and #2. The
Nice.
Tyler Kirkham. I think fair market value on those that's really stupid. It's like $700, and they're autographed by Tyler Kirkham. I think we have them in there for $500. 100% of that money goes to American Cancer Society because they were a donation. We also have Venom, Lethal Protector #1. The best raw copy I've ever seen of that book. It's spectacular. You can send it right to CGC. And then X-Men 256, First Ninja Psylocke.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
Yeah, it is.
All right. All right. Apparently, I need to brush up on my X-Men lore.
Well, she had that purple hair and like the pink, flowy nightgown looking costume in New Mutants. She was totally different. And then she, then she kind of showed up in Uncanny X-Men. She didn't do a whole lot, and then Jim Lee and Chris Claremont were like, she should be more badass. And then they turned her more badass.
Well, she definitely needs to be more badass. Badass
Yeah.
Psylocke. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. And then it got confusing after that. I don't know, Revanche and all that stuff, and it was really, I don't know what happened. I'm not even sure what the hell I read with that. I don't know.
One thing that is really interesting, though, you got these 3 books here. I think all 3 of these are books that, as we're experiencing kind of a downturn in the market, these are just happen to be 3 books that are kind of holding their value and moving up.
Yeah.
So, all right. So that will be it for today. Make sure you tune in Wednesdays where we come to you live from Black Cat Comics. We're going to run down the wall, show you all the new books available.
Unless it's a blizzard.
I probably would have been here even through the blizzard, but I had just gotten home when I messaged you. I take my daughters to a meeting they had.
And I refused to open until you got here. I just opened an hour ago.
So, and then Greg shows us kind of his picks for the week. We do the Greg's picks on Wednesdays. So pop in Wednesdays for that. We go live Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch, and I don't know where else. A couple other places, I'm sure. And then, of course, this show drops every Monday morning at 8 o'clock.
So pick it up and love it.
So in order to be informed of everything that's coming up, make sure you like, comment, give us your thoughts on the show, and subscribe. And make sure you ding the little button or ring the bell. Ring the bell to be informed of when our next shows are coming up.
Ring the bell.
All right. Till next time, traders.